The longest book I've ever written is 600 A4 pages. I think just having something that long on a document that kept freezing, on something that kept taking so long, it was a mission and I got it done. That's probably been a massive, massive accomplishment.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Writing Inspirations with Markee Books. I'm your host, Dan Recovery, and we have our guest for today. Say hello to Kim Barden. Hello Kim, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you going?
How do you feel today? I hear that the sun is rising in your country.
Yeah, so it's 6 a.m., but it is pouring down with rain right now, so it's a bit overcast, but I'm just having my first coffee for the day, so you'll have to forgive me if I trip up on some words while we're talking this morning.
Actually, it's raining here too. We are at 4 p.m. right now in America.
Yeah.
So, tell me, Kim, how did it start? When did you start writing?
Look, it's a really interesting question because I think I've always written. I've always enjoyed short stories and poetry and reading, as you can probably tell from behind me. But I think I attempted my first proper novel when I was about 15, and it was super exciting. And I think I got about 30,000 words in before I kind of decided it was a bit too hard and I couldn't do it. And I didn't actually revisit it until about when I was 28, 29 years old. And it was National Novel Writing Month that kind of got me over the line in completing that word count. So I think there's always been a writer in me. I just don't think she really knew when to come out until, 6 years ago.
Yeah, I understand the feeling. It's like you always want to write something, but you had other things that you thought they were more interesting at the time. So it's really strange. It's not common for teenagers to become writers, to be honest. Mostly
No,
because
it's
we
definitely not.
have too much distractions at those times that it's very difficult. You need to be someone super focused or someone with anything else to do.
Exactly right. And I think with the amount of hormones you've got going on at the time, you're trying to work through your own feelings. You don't really know how to put that into somebody else's character as well. And then you've got, high school and school exams and all that kind of stuff happening in life. So I think you're 100% right. There aren't many writers who have managed to do it. The only two that I can think off the top of my head is Sarah J. Maas and Christopher Paolini. I think they both wrote Throne of Glass and Aragon when they were 16.
Wow, that's amazing. Most of the guests I've been interviewed here started on college and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think starting a bit later is normal because as adults, as I said, we learn to process our emotions a bit more and we understand people a little bit more in life. And I think, for those of us who have a calling for writing and want to write, we sort of prioritize that and we realize that that's something that we really want to do. And we sort of work, excuse me. I said, still waking up. I feel like I've got my morning, croaky voice happening. Yeah, so we're still, I think by that point, we're a little bit more confident in what we know, but also in the amount of books that we've read and the stories, but also in who we are. And I think that does make the process a little bit easy. Not that I'm saying it's easy at all, because it's absolutely not. But yeah, I do think there's a lot to say about experience and being able to write at that. So as I said, I was later than college. I was about 28 by the time I wrote my first proper book. But I'm not surprised by that fact at all.
Oh, then you write your first official book at 28.
Yeah, around then. So it was about 2017 or 2018 that I wrote The Gilded Mirror, which is my debut novel. And I've written about 7 since then. So I'm currently writing my 8th. So it's been a bit of a wild ride.
What made you try again after, stopping at 15? This time to finish it?
Yeah, I think this time there was this urgency to it. I don't know how else to explain it. I had for about 6 months just this itch that I really needed to scratch, for lack of a better term. But I had all of these ideas brewing and I didn't know how to release them. And I thought, I do want to write a book. I want to go back to it. I want to give it another go. And when the Gilded Mirror came into creation, it was originally something entirely different from what it is now. I wanted,
It always is.
yeah, it always is. So I wanted to do like an Ella Enchanted, standalone fairy tale retelling just to dip my toes back in. And I had a few ideas about what I wanted to do with that. And it ended up becoming this dark, gritty 5-book series based on the original fairy tales, which I don't know if you've read them, but they're quite dark, and a lot of them don't get their happily ever afters. A lot of them die, or they cut off toes, or they're quite violent, or bargains go wrong.
I don't know the original fairy tales. Yeah, they were on those times. They were cautionary tales for kids, like don't do this, don't
100%.
do that. So it's different from our perspective of fairy tale right now. Completely different.
100%. And I ended up adopting that perspective instead, that Victorian cautionary tale vibe, and it ended up just becoming something entirely different. But to answer the question, yeah, originally I just wanted to A, see if I could do it. B, I had this itch to do it. I had something in me that had to. And C, I did it. So, yeah. And then once I finished it, I couldn't stop. So here I am now, thoroughly addicted.
Do you like balance your work with being an author, or you're a full-time author?
I balance a full-time job outside of writing. So I do that 5 days a week, but I allocate 2 hours a day to writing. So if I am in the middle of a current whip, I'll make sure that I've allocated at least 5 days a week, 2 hours a day to that work in progress. And then that way it makes sure that I'm still paying it the attention that it needs, and I'm still building a routine with that.
A question. Did you easily get inspired by another writer when you were working on your series?
I think yes and no. The Grimm's fairy tales, as I said, the Grimm's brothers as writers, but those fairy tales were heavily influenced this series. So I reread them quite a lot, but I think I took a lot of my writing style or things in the books from some of my favorite novels. As I said, Ella Enchanted kind of inspired a little bit of that as well. I took, bits and pieces from The Princess Bride and a few other movies, sort of along that similar vein. So I do like to think it's got that kind of charm that The Princess Bride had, but it's also much darker with the original fairy tales. So I wouldn't say in this particular series there's one author that I've really pulled from, but probably an array of lots of little things that I sort of, over the 6 years of writing it, have amalgamated and kind of turned into my own and created this world.
Okay. So do you like self-publish or are traditionally published?
So this one's an interesting question. So recently I am self-publishing. So my series first 3 books was originally released with a hybrid publisher, and that didn't work out too well. So we separated. So I've actually gone through the process of re-releasing these books. So these are second editions. So these ones are self-published and they are under my name. So they've been rewritten, re-edited, redesigned, re-released. So the first 2 have been re-released. Book 3 is the last one that I need to release under my name before I'm fully separated from the publisher. But then 4 and 5 have never seen the light of day. And I'm really excited to release a new book for the first time in more than 4 years. But yeah, self-published at the moment, and I've actually really, really loved it. It's been a really good experience and a huge learning curve, especially considering, self-published authors need to be marketers as well as, they need to commission everyone else as well for editors, designing, formatting, all of that jazz. So it was very overwhelming with the first book. With the second, it was a bit easier. And I do think that by the time the third one comes out, I definitely have way more idea of what I'm doing and what I want to do with it. So, yeah.
It's always like that, usually. So do you think like your full-time job has influenced your work in some way?
For the work that I do, no. So, I mean, it could. My work aligns with a lot of my own moral beliefs and things like that. But as for it being involved with the books, they don't correlate at all. Unfortunately, I can't take any inspiration from that. But wish I could. but I don't have a very creative job. So when I do come, out in the afternoons and do start writing, it's sort of like a complete separation, two completely different things. One's analytical, and my writing kind of lets me go a little bit crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. It happens similar to me too. So, how is your writing experience these days? How do you feel? Are you still writing something right now?
I'm currently plot planning something right now. Does that count?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I took a bit of a break once I finished the finale for the Finding Ever After series. So did 3 or 4 months, a bit of a break, but I'm starting to feel the niggle of inspiration. So, I'm currently figuring out plot points and planning out my next book, and I'm hoping I can start typing it around Christmas. But we'll see how we go. I'm very excited about this one.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about that too. You mentioned pre-planning, but do you actually do outlining or other methods?
What I do is I know some people have storyboards, some people write out full chapters. I basically have a think about what I want this story to be. What are their relationships? What do we want to get out of this story? What is the beginning, the middle, and the end? And then what I do is I kind of roughly write down what the main plot points are. So what are the pivotal moments in the book? So for example, one of my adult books that I plan on releasing in 2027, I only had 10 dot points. And that was my plan for the book. But those 10 dot points were like the main pivotal moment. So I knew that would be the next scene that I had to get to. So when I wrote the book, it was very pantser in that I didn't know how I was getting to that next scene. So I kind of let it flow and the creativity took control, but I knew where it was going the whole time, if that makes sense.
No, actually it does.
Yeah, so I really love it when characters take over, and I really love seeing where they go and kind of experimenting with scenes, because some of the best scenes or best character interactions that I've ever had have been completely unplanned. And I didn't want to lose that, the more books I wrote. So this is kind of like a planning that's worked for me where, these are the pivotal moments that need to happen. So the book happens how we want it to happen. But how they get there, who knows? It's an adventure.
Actually, when I outline, it's basically the same. I left like a very big room for improvisation in some parts. I just these are the characters that will be on this chapter. This is the main focus on this chapter. And this is the main event that it will happen. This is the ideas of the subplots. I don't make like a detailed description of the events. I just say like a little title like this character will confront this one. That's all. And then when I reach that place, I'll just read that. Oh, a confrontation. And it came by itself.
Yeah. And a lot of the time it's fascinating how your brain works too, because sometimes when you're improvising, something that, you wrote back here fits in really well with something down here, and they just go together. It's like your brain in the background has sort of already figured out that plot point or plot hole. Like some of the most beautiful, interweaving twists have come together without me thinking about it, which is amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had plot holes, absolutely. That's what my developmental editors picked up on. But there has been some real magic from being able to improvise. So I'm 100% with you on that one.
I have interviewed songwriters that do complete improvisation, but I can't. I need at least that outline I mentioned, so because sometimes I forget the names of some characters on the background that I need at least to remember, so I know what their role is. Because honestly, I tend to forget, so I prefer like to have at least a bit of that on the outline, just for some control, because otherwise it's a mess.
I am 100% with you. And I think it also helps with writer's block, like if you're making it up as you go, you kind of get to a point sometimes where you're like, I don't really know where this story is going. Like, what do we want to do here? And I think when you've got a plot planned like that, you might have to tweak it, but at least you know where it's going and what needs to happen, and you can kind of work your way around it. I've just found that in my most recent novel, since I started planning like that, it's really helped me, write them faster, and it's made the process so much more smoother. So Yeah, I love that.
You mentioned writer's blocks. Have you ever suffered?
Oh yeah, what writer hasn't?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm pretty lucky. I haven't had any major ones, but somebody once told me that if you've got writer's block, read the most recent three chapters that you have. It's most likely that you've written yourself into a corner somewhere in those last three chapters. And you know what? That advice has never steered me wrong. So every time I've gotten writer's block, I've gone back three chapters and I've reread them all. And every single time I found a corner that I've written myself into or something that didn't quite fit. And once I fixed that, the rest of the story flowed. So hot tip for anyone, give it a red hot go because it's worked for me with 7 books.
That's actually, I never heard about that one. Usually, I have heard that the rest, like shut out your brain, go out, smell the flowers, and then came back when something came. Because I have said this to people before, but I met a writer before that quit writing because he ended up hating his work because he was forced every day to write.
Yep.
He was forcing himself every single day till he said, I'm done, and then quit forever.
And I think it's a hard balance to do. I think stepping away is definitely valid advice. Like, as I said, when I finished my 5th book, I mainly had maybe book writing burnout. I'd released 2 books this year. I'd already re-edited the 3rd and the 4th, like self-edited. And then I'd finished writing book 5, which is, 240,000 words. It's a very big document, a very big book. So, 3 months ago, I hit a complete wall, which is one of the reasons why I stepped away because I didn't want to then start hating writing. But yeah, I think if you've got writer's block and you're too in it, you know how sometimes, you're too in the story and then you kind of can't, take a step back and have a look. So I think stepping away is definitely a big thing. But once you come back to that book, reread the last 3 chapters. And I can guarantee you, whatever the problem is probably a teeny tiny thing in those last 30 to 50 pages.
Well, sometimes it's because they don't have ideas. So it's better to, watch a movie or something.
Yeah, I agree.
Inspiration always came from the most unexpected places.
Yeah, they come from walks, movies, other books. Yeah.
So, do you think you changed as a person since you started writing professionally?
I don't think I've changed as a person. I think I'm definitely more mindful of my time, though. Since I started prioritizing writing and publishing, I've just really made sure to allocate that time to myself. So a lot of the time in my 20s, I would get FOMO. I would always want to be somewhere or at events, and I would always prioritize that over staying home and finishing the book. So I think the biggest difference that I've done in the last 5 or so or 6 years is allocated that time. So, when I was so close to the end of book 5, that had taken me years and years to write, I ended up just being really honest with people, which I wouldn't have done prior to this, where I was just like, I'm almost at the end of my book, cannot come because of this. And the thing is I thought people would be like, oh, no, you should still come. And I have the best friends in the world because all of them were just like, go finish it. You got this, go do it. And it was really beautiful in that way. But yeah, in my 20s, I wouldn't have dreamed of disappointing everyone by saying no or not going or not prioritizing that time and myself and that project. So that's probably the biggest thing. But fundamentally, I don't think it's changed much about me, just my priorities, I guess.
What do you think is the most difficult thing you have to struggle with when you started writing?
I think it's not knowing what to expect. And I think it's no matter how many books that you read, right, about how to write, none of them really answer the question. So I think the most helpful book I ever read about, writing was On Writing by Stephen King, which half of which is a memoir. It's a great book. But, every single book had different methods of how to finish a book. They had different ideas, different ways of doing things. And I think I got really frustrated because, I'd hit that 30,000 word mark before. And I think subconsciously I was terrified of that 30,000 word mark. And, people start books all the time and then they never finish them. So I think my biggest frustration was that I didn't know what worked for me. I didn't know if I could finish a book. I didn't know what the finish line looked like. I didn't know how to plan it. I didn't know how to do anything. So it's kind of like wading through, the big wide ocean with a snorkel and you're just trying to figure out the best way to land. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. By the second or third book, I found my second book harder, but more so because I knew what kind of grit and grind goes into it. But now it's a lot easier because I know what to expect. I know, what it takes to write a book. I know what I need to do for me personally to write a book. But yeah, I think as a new writer, a lot of people are like, how do you write a book? How do you do it? And it's such an impossible question to answer. And it makes it really difficult because people don't know how, and there's no way to tell them how to do it. And as a first time writer, I think that really hit me on the head when I was doing it, that I had no idea what I was doing and I didn't know what to expect. And I'm somebody who likes to have a little bit of control over what they're doing and their world. So it was very much outside of the box for me.
How long did it take you to finish your first book?
7 weeks.
Wow.
So yeah, I did it. I did it on National Novel Writing Month, which is that you write 50,000 words in 30 days. I wrote majority of my debut book, and I'm putting it out. I have not done this with the other books, but I wrote it mainly on my mobile phone. So I downloaded an app that formatted your text into like chapters and I basically typed it. So I'm talking before work, on my lunch break, after work. I was doing something like 2,000-3,000 words a day. It was word vomit. I've edited so much of that out, but it was basically just at that time, I was going for the word count kept me motivated. I kept reading everywhere that your first draft is always going to be a trash file. It's never going to be good. So just get the words out. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about rewording. You can't edit a blank page. So just get the words out. And I did. After 7 weeks, I had a 96,000 word, which has been, as I said, heavily edited and completely rewritten since then. But at the time, I was holding this almost 100,000 words in my hand, and it was there and it was editable and it existed. So, as I said, some of them have taken me a couple of years, but yeah, book one on a mobile phone, that word count for some reason works for me. Having that chart that NaNoWriMo has where you enter your word count and you can like see it on the chart against your goal, that worked for me. So I find now that a lot of my writing routines have like word count goals or timing. So I have to do 2 hours today, whether it's 500 words I write or 5,000, cool. Or, I'm going to hit 1,000 words a week. 1,000 words a day this week. So whether that takes me 4 hours or 1 hour. So when I sit down, I really, really manifest a specific goal in my head of what I want to achieve that particular day or week.
No, actually, my editor told me the same thing, that I should try to do exactly that. So I don't think it's that strange, but it probably is for someone that has like a full-time job on their neck every day, of course. So do you have like another advice for new writers?
As I said, I think my biggest advice is what I took on board when I was writing too, that your first draft is never going to be good. Even the most prolific writers, their first draft is, it might be good to us, but to them, it's never good. You know what I mean? So my biggest advice is just get the words down. Don't look back. Don't focus on re-editing. Don't overthink it. Just get the words down, get them out, put them on paper, because you can always go back and edit it later. You can't edit a blank page, but if you just spew the story out, get the words out there, you'll then have a book which you can edit. And editing is where the magic happens. So
Unless you change the story completely, but that's another thing.
yeah, but that's a whole other thing that we need to tackle. But yeah, I think for first drafts, it's just keep going, keep writing the words down. Don't focus on them too much. Just get the story out there, and you'll have a book eventually that you can then edit. Which is as you said, it's a whole other process.
So, do you have like a story of how you name it your series?
Of how I name them. I
Yeah.
haven't been asked that before. I think this series is interesting because the first novel named itself The Gilded Mirror. Like, it's very fairy tale. It's very, fits the vibe. And then These Grim Fates with the double M, which is the sequel, kind of came to me naturally as well. But then I had to kind of figure out for the rest of the series, I've noticed that there are 3 words in the title and the middle word starts with a G. So like The Gilded Mirror, These Grim Fates. And I really had to have a think about, the themes and the relevance for the other titles. So the third book is A Glass Darkly, which is a reference to Alice in Wonderland and Through a Glass Darkly, the mirror. And then books 4 and 5, I already have titles for them as well, but I haven't released them yet because they won't be released until end of next year, start of 2026. So they were really fun, but they did take a lot of playing around with.
Oh, you recently released book 3,
yeah,
right?
So book 2 came out October, so just last month. Book 3 will come out mid next year, and then book 4 will come out year after, like maybe the start of. That's the plan anyway, so we'll see how we go with the publishing timeline. But as you know, it takes it out. I could do it quicker, but I just don't. I like to give myself 6 months, that gives me 2 to 3 months of proper editing and taking my time and making sure that I'm hitting all those spots and formatting it and whatnot. And then it gives me 3 months. So that way my ARC readers aren't rushed, my marketing isn't rushed, all of that. So I like to give myself a minimum of 6 months between books. If I can get a little bit more time than that, then I will obviously always take it. But yeah, so I think because I'll be traveling overseas at the beginning of next year. So it will be 6 months in publishing, but I'll be taking time off as well to travel. So,
to what country are you going?
I'm taking my mom to France for her 70th. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it should be really good. I'm excited. I'll be writing my newest book at a chateau in the wine region. So I'm very excited for that.
Oh, so it's like an investigation traveling?
Yeah, we'll call it inspiration. It is a pirate book, so I don't know how I can claim that inland is a good inspiration. But hey, there is cheese and wine, and they are great writing companions. So
you say it. So, do you have a main message you want people to understand the moment they read the whole series?
It's a good question because the fairy tales, as you were saying, are cautionary tales. They are centered around morals and good versus bad, dark versus light. But I think one of the main things that I got from that is in this series is that not everybody has a happily ever after, or people's happily ever after look different. So a big theme in this is that some people will get that happily ever after, some people won't, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. It's that life is not always fair, and you can try your best and you can try your hardest, and sometimes you're going to get maybe a happy after that looks different to what you thought it looked like. But I also want to sort of keep that theme on the lengths some people would go for a happy ever after. So, what makes them a villain, what drives their choices to find that happy ever after. So I would probably say that that's the consistent theme throughout the whole thing, because we've got one villain who's looking for a happily ever after, and she'll do anything to obtain it. And I mean, she will hurt a lot of people to do it. And then you've got somebody else whose happily ever after looks entirely different. However, we watch their happily ever after change based on who they meet, what they're experiencing, what they do. And it's not necessarily what she thought she was going to achieve, but she ends up, with a different vision instead. And then you've got somebody else who doesn't get the happily ever after at all, somebody else who does. And so it's a huge theme in there on, in real life, we're all looking for our own version of happiness. We're all looking for our own version of fulfillment or legacy or whatever else it is. And we all make choices to be able to influence that or do that. So, that's probably the biggest consistent message that I'd have through there, just that happily ever after and what that means or looks like for different characters. So that was really fun to explore, actually.
What do you think is your favorite book so far?
Out of all the books I've written? To be honest, I wrote a pirate adult romantasy last year, which I will be releasing in conjunction with books 4 and 5 of this series. And I'm obsessed. That's probably my favorite book so far. But in the Finding Ever After series, I'd probably say book 5 is my favorite, the finale. I think something magic really happened with that one. So I feel like that's going to be a big year. The two favorite books that I've written come out in the same year. So
no,
yeah,
it's okay.
I'm pretty excited for that.
Most writers, most professional writers release 2 at least.
Yeah. So, I'm excited for them to be released. 2027 will be a big year. So,
actually, my editor, which is kind of like my publisher, he recommended me to write in a series. If I need a change of pace, I can write a short story for a month before continuing with the series, just for a rest.
That's a really good idea.
Or even an anthology. Actually, I started an anthology of my own series for else stories about minor characters, about their lives, just like a complement that I probably will release after the series is done.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a really good idea, and it definitely works. This pirate series was a product of me writing a short story between 2 of my Finding Ever After books, and I took that short story and I've turned it into a duology. So, absolutely. I think it's really therapeutic to do that, and it helps you understand your characters a bit more too. So that's really cool that you're putting it into an anthology.
Actually, it happens to me too, what you said about your favorite, because I made a duology prequel of my series, and because the world was so different on that past, I kind of like it more, that world, than the one in my series.
I'm scared that will happen if I write a prequel. Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah, or a sequel. Well, not a sequel necessarily. A spin-off can happen in the future too.
Yeah. It's great.
So what is your largest goal or dream as a writer? Finish the series?
It was to finish the series, and I did that year, this year, which was amazing. I think my next goal is to, ideally one day I want to be able to do this full time. I would love to be able to just write and, create worlds and either add on to this and build my collection and stories. That's probably my ultimate goal. But yeah, for this year, to be perfectly honest, it was just finish that finale. And I crawled there, but I did it. As I said, it's one of my favorites, I think, because it's got some really cool twists and stuff in it. But again, as I said before, it's first draft. So I know for a fact when I open that bad boy up in 6 to 12 months, it is not going to be as beautifully memorable as I am, reflecting on it now. I will probably be cringing when I'm reading it, but it's finished. I'm excited that it's finished, and honestly, I'm still soaking in that accomplishment 3 months later. So,
okay. I wanted to ask: are you planning give it a try on other genres? Other type of works and stories, like
absolutely.
New series that don't have anything to do with fantasy, for example.
Yeah, so as I said, Finding Ever After is like young adult fantasy. My Pirates one is adult fantasy, but I do want to finish the story that I started writing when I was 15 because it is it's kind of like Treasure Planet. It's like a sci-fi Indiana Jones, like treasure hunting, big chases, a bit of fun, bit of tongue in cheek,
Yeah, I love that. I love that
adventure.
movie.
Yeah, it's so good.
And
Yeah,
so
I definitely
underrated.
want to step into sci-fi a bit. And I don't know, maybe a contemporary romance. I might give that a whirl. But yeah, definitely fantasy is probably the primary, but I do want to write a sci-fi. So
That
yeah, we'll
was
see how we go.
that was interesting. What do you think it's like your biggest experience that you have with readers so far?
I've been extremely lucky in that I've got some great readers. So I've had messages and connected with some readers who really resonated with the books and really loved it and gushed about it. And, their word of mouth is everything. Like it's not just the fact that readers buy and, read and then review. It's they share your story on social media. They spread the word around. Shows like Game of Thrones, for example, didn't have much advertising when they first came out. It became huge because of word of mouth. And so people have so much power. And I've got a couple of readers who have just jumped into my DMs and gushed about the book and told me, their favorite characters or what's, been magical for them. And it's been amazing to be able to connect with them on that front and see it. And they're now at the top of my ARC lists and stuff. So if the next book comes out, I let them know personally that the list is open. So I don't know, building that connection. Yeah, there's two or three in particular I'm thinking of the top of my head where we've just had a fantastic time. But I've also been really privileged in that one reader is a 3D printer. She runs a 3D printer business and she actually 3D printed my covers and posted them to me. So I just thought that was really special. So yeah, I've been really blessed in that I've been able to connect with a few people quite closely. And I think that's just been my favorite part. It's been very cool.
That's so nice. Do you have like a support network with other writers?
Yeah, I do. So I'm in quite a few group chats with other independent authors. Quite a lot of them are, US based. So as an Aussie, it's been a bit hard. But I've also recently connected with a lot more Aussie indie authors, which has been great. So Bookstagram as a community has just been really, really amazing connecting with other writers and readers. And I've learnt a lot from other writers and readers through it. So yeah, I've probably got about three or four main writer groups. So one from a few years ago that I'm sort of a part of, one with mainly just Aussie independent authors, and then probably one with my beta readers who are also other authors as well, and we're kind of in a smaller chat. So yeah, I definitely do have those networks around me and support. It just took me a while to find them.
What do you think is the greatest accomplishment you have done as a writer right now?
As I said, writing that finale, I think. It's the longest book I've ever written. Most of my books are somewhere around 90,000 to 130,000 words. That seems to be what my average is, which is a decent sized book. But yeah, the finale is about 220,000. It's something like 600 A4 pages, and I don't have like double margin spaces or anything. So it was, I think, just having something that long on a document that kept freezing, on something that kept taking so long, was it was a mission, and I got it done. But the other thing that I'm probably really proud of is the whole re-release of my new series. I think, the new covers, the fact that I've been able to make my books hardback, which I've always wanted to do because I've got a preference for hardback books. That's probably been a massive, massive accomplishment. So I'm very excited to hold this entire series in my hands one day.
But I guess you're releasing them in paperback too, right?
Yes. Yeah. So they're in paperback, hardback, and ebook.
Yeah, I prefer hardback too, but sometimes, for example, I bought two books for my mom of her birthday, but hardback was too expensive and I have to pay for the paperbacks instead.
Yeah, I fully feel that. So sometimes, yeah, I don't know. It's really funny because like some hardbacks are reasonably priced and then others aren't. And yeah, I don't know. It's I think printing costs have gone up severely since COVID, so it does hurt book readers like us, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, do you have like plans for the future? Like, are you planning to go to an event in person to promote
So
you?
recently, I wasn't selling at the event, but I recently attended Supernova in Brisbane just to visit some of my other author friends. So that was really fun, meeting other authors and some readers and stuff like that. But I have signed up for Supernova and Comic Con in Brisbane next year. So I will be at those events. I'm
Oh,
also potentially looking at.
I didn't know there was
Hmm?
a Comic Con there.
Yeah, Oz Comic Con. So we've got our own Aussie version of it. It's definitely nowhere near as big as what you guys get. So we just don't have the population. But yeah, and the
Yeah,
one of the biggest book fairs in Australia is called Book Fair Sydney or Book Fair Australia. So that will be in Sydney. So I might drive down to Sydney for that when that's on next year. So they're events that I've planned. But as for book releases, I'm hoping I've got a list out until end of 2027 at the moment. So I should have 5 books coming out in the next 3 years.
that's nice. So,
Yeah.
can you tell us the platforms we can get your books from?
Yeah, absolutely. So my books are wide. So they're distributed through Amazon and Ingram, which means that they're basically on majority of platforms. So Kobo, Kindle, Apple, but they also upload on Dimmix, Booktopia, Barnes and Noble, Waterstones online. Yeah, so they should be available at most outlets, at least online. They are available in some independent bookstores in Australia. As for in the US, I don't know if any independent bookstores have picked them up, but the best thing you guys can do is if you do want it, request it in libraries, request it in independent bookstores, but otherwise online, Amazon or any of your bookstores that should be available.
Nice. So, can you share with us some of the social media people can check for information about these releases?
Yeah, so most of my releases, I don't have a newsletter yet. I just haven't been able to prioritize it. But most of my updates is I'm most active on Instagram and Threads. So all of my social media being TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook, they're my main 4, and they're all under the same name of K.E. Barden author. But Instagram is probably where I'm the most active, and you get your most up-to-date updates on what I'm working on, what I'm writing, character art, what's happening, arc reviews, sign-ups, and whatnot. And I am currently upgrading my website, so that should be available soon as well.
That's great. Well, Kim, I think that's all for now. I hope we can talk again when your next book is maybe out.
That'd be great. I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And thank you for coming. Well, guys, this was another episode of Writing Inspiration with Markee Books. Here with Kim, we wish you a good day. Bye.
Bye.